So it's been almost 6 years since Shinobi Striker released back in the fall of 2018, and since then, exactly 40 DLC characters have been added into the game. Alongside with the 20 base game characters, we now have 60 playable masters in Shinobi Striker. So what better time than now to rank all of them from worst to best? Now, before we get into it, I just want to say that this ranking is not only made based on how good the characters are, but also how fun their jutsu are to play with and how unique they were at the time of their release. Obviously, there's also gonna be a little bit of bias here, so just keep that in mind. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the list. Okay, starting off at the bottom of the list, we have Shikamaru, and honestly, I kinda forgot this character even existed in the game. You don't see his jutsu being used at all, and for a good reason too. Both of his base ninjutsu are incredibly hard to land and don't even offer much of a reward for doing so. His ultimate is definitely the best thing about it, but it still doesn't save him from the last spot on this list. Coming down the list, we have Onoki at the second to last. Now, okay, I understand that his jutsu do have some utility, especially in something like Flag Battle, but his entire arsenal is just extremely boring in my opinion. Both of his jutsu behave very similarly. One slows down the enemy team and the other one speeds up your allies. His ultimate is an okay one-hit kill, but again, it's not anything this game hasn't seen before. Next up on the list, we have Yamato. The main reason he's this low on this list is his wall jutsu, which apart from just being very lame is also rarely useful. His other jutsu is a decent stun, which does have some good combo potential, and his ultimate can definitely be usable in team battles with its short cooldown being a major upside. That being said, Yamato still doesn't stack up to the other characters in the game in my opinion. Next up we have Hinata, who I would consider quite a big step up from the last entry. Her first jutsu is a wind projectile that stops the enemy from using jutsus for 8 seconds. This is in my opinion her best jutsu. Unfortunately, Byakugan, her second ninjutsu, is not that great. It allows you to see enemies through walls whilst also boosting your attack. It's okay, but it doesn't really have many use cases. Her ultimate is a 2-stage attack. The first part she spins around and in the second one she shoots a projectile. Both of these damage the enemy. The great thing about it is the fact that it depletes the enemy's secret technique gauge, but it does really low damage for an ultimate, making it just okay in my opinion. Next up we have Double Sharingan Kakashi. Let me just preface this by saying that the only reason this character is this low on the list is because he's probably the least original character in the entire game. All of his jutsu are good, but they are basically reskins of all jutsu. His first jutsu is the same as Chidori or Lightning Blade. The only change is that you're now completely invulnerable while performing the jutsu. His second jutsu is completely, and I mean completely the same as Obito's Kamui, making you invulnerable while you're not attacking. The ultimate is probably his weakest jutsu, as it takes a very long time to charge up and is mostly just a one-hit kill. Again, the jutsu are definitely good and very useful, but they are nothing new, making Double Sharingan Kakashi one of the most underwhelming DLCs to ever come out. Coming in at number 55 is Sarada. Her first jutsu is the smash, which is very close to Sakura's jutsu, but the problem is that it is quite a lot harder to land. The jutsu has a rather small radius, making it often very hard to use. Her second jutsu throws down kudai on the ground, which heal anyone in the area. This jutsu can definitely sometimes be useful in team battles, but there are a lot better options out there for heal types. Finally, her ultimate is definitely the best jutsu in her arsenal. It makes you throw down a demon wind shuriken followed by kunai with healing and explosive tags. This ultimate not only heals your allies but also damages the enemy. It's really good in team battles as it can change the outcome of the fight very easily, but it still doesn't help Sarada from being near the bottom of this list. Okay, next up on the list we have Jiraiya, and this is probably the point of the list where from here on out I'd say the characters are mostly good. His first jutsu is a range attack that makes you shoot out an oil bomb at the enemy. This jutsu does a decent amount of damage and also slows down the enemy for a certain period of time. There's not many ranged jutsus in defense class, so this can definitely be a viable pick. His second jutsu puts you in a cocoon of hair, making any enemy that gets close to you take a bunch of damage while also making you invulnerable. This is a good jutsu for base battle. Outside of it, it can sometimes be hard to use. Finally, his ultimate summons a giant toad, killing any enemies on impact. If used correctly, this ultimate can kill a great number of people. The only disadvantage is the fact that the enemies are able to dodge it if they're paying enough attention. Also, the ultimate has a big cooldown, meaning that sometimes you won't even get it in a shorter game. At number 53, we have another member of the legendary Sannin, Orochimaru. His first jutsu makes you lunge at your opponent with multiple snakes, dealing damage while also poisoning the enemy. This jutsu is good at keeping enemies at a distance, but the downside of it is the rather low damage. His second jutsu makes you shoot a wind bullet, dealing 30% of the enemy's health. The best part of this jutsu is the fact that it's not only unblockable, but can also go through walls, making it very annoying to play against. His ultimate summons the first and second Kage, who both attack the enemy with their respective dragons. This ultimate isn't necessarily bad, but it does have quite a high cast time, which makes it quite dodgeable. Overall, I would say Orochimaru mainly offers one good jutsu in Wind Bullet. Apart from that, he's just okay. Following up at number 52, we have Base Sakura. Base Sakura is the first character on this list I would say is overall pretty good, and her jutsu can definitely be used in many loadouts. Her first jutsu is probably her worst one. You jump out into the air and smash the ground, dealing damage to the nearby enemies. Once again, this jutsu is just way too inconsistent to be a good pick, and there are many better offensive healing type jutsus for heal types. Her second jutsu on the hand is actually really good. It heals you and your allies in a certain range for 30% of your health, which is a lot. This jutsu is incredibly simple yet very effective and can be part of some great loadouts. Finally, her ultimate basically does the same as the previous jutsu but across the entire map while also reviving the recently killed allies. This isn't the best healing ultimate in the game, but a big upside is the incredibly low cooldown. You're likely to get this ultimate 2 or even 3 times during a match, making it still a viable option to this day. Coming down the list, we have Neji at number 51. His first jutsu repels anyone in a close proximity and negates any negative effects. The best part of this jutsu is that it can be used as a second substitution jutsu since it can be activated while getting hit. Otherwise, this jutsu doesn't really do all that much. His second jutsu makes you charge the enemy, and after hitting them, you release a little beam resetting the enemy's substitution stack and also lowering their secret technique gauge. This jutsu doesn't deal a lot of damage, but its main use case is the fact that you can easily limit access to the ultimates for the entire enemy team. Finally, his ultimate stuns everyone in a close radius around you and deals a decent chunk of damage to everyone inside. The activation time of this ultimate is actually really short, but the fact that it doesn't kill the enemies makes it not a very viable option in my opinion. Overall, Neji provides some decent utility jutsu, and whilst he doesn't deal a lot of damage, he's definitely very useful. Next up on the list at number 50, we have the second Hokage, Tobirama. His first jutsu shoots out a water dragon, dealing 20% to the enemy upon impact. This jutsu's biggest strength is its incredibly low cast time, making it a great counter. That being said, the damage isn't particularly high. His second jutsu makes you spray a thin ray of water out of your mouth from right to left, dealing good damage to any enemies that you can hit. Once again, this jutsu has a very short cast time, but it is pretty hard to land consistently considering the fact that the enemy can often just jump over it. Finally, his ultimate sets up a paper bomb tray, which makes a big explosion, dealing a bunch of damage to any enemy in range when somebody steps on it. This jutsu has some fun combination potential with Sasuke's Heavenly Hand, and it can be a useful tool in both base battle and flag battle. But outside of those two game modes, you're gonna be having a rather hard time landing this jutsu. Next up, we have Ino at number 49. Ino is kind of a mixed bag for me personally. Her first jutsu is arguably the best healing jutsu in the entire game, allowing you to heal all of your teammates from any distance at once for a stupid amount of time and HP. The biggest downside of this jutsu is that you have to be entirely out of combat to use it, making it by far the most boring jutsu in the whole game. With her second jutsu, Ino shoots out a projectile that upon impact makes the enemy fall into a trance-like state that makes them completely immobile. And after second activation, it makes the enemy use a paper bomb on themselves, dealing a bunch of damage. I know that a lot of people don't like this jutsu, and I'm not gonna argue it's good. It has a long cast time and can be very hard to hit even with good tracking. That being said, I think it's actually really unique, which makes it more fun to use. And it deals a good amount of damage as well if you manage to land it. The ultimate is basically the same as the previous jutsu, but instead you shoot out 4 projectiles, making you be able to affect the whole enemy team. This ultimate is really lazy, I'm not going to lie, but it's actually really decent in team fights. And it has a pretty low cooldown as well, meaning that in some games you will be able to pull this up twice. Unfortunately, what makes it not so good is that if your team is uncoordinated and your teammates hit the opponent, it cancels out the trance, making this ultimate a lot more useless unless you're playing with good teammates. Moving down the list to spot number 48, we have Sai. Sai is a really straightforward character and a pure range type. Both of his jutsu shoot out ink drawings as projectiles. The first jutsu summons 4 dogs that chase the enemy with incredibly high speed and range. The second jutsu summons a big bird, which does have shorter range but inflicts a really annoying effect on the enemy, which makes them unable to see properly because their screen is obstructed by ink. Finally, his ultimate summons 2 huge human drawings which charge forward, dealing 80% of damage to anyone in the way. This ultimate has a really low cooldown, making it a great choice. Overall, I would say that Sai just simply has a really decent arsenal all around. The one side is that he doesn't deal a huge amount of damage, but his jutsu are really easy to hit, which makes up for it, I would say. And number 47 is another base game character, Choji. His first jutsu makes you expand your arm and deal damage to your enemies with a backhand attack. This is one of the few jutsus in the game that actually has 2 variations depending on whether you're on the ground or in the air, making it pretty unique in that sense. It does deal good damage but can sometimes be challenging to land. His second jutsu is the main reason he has been able to climb this far in the rankings. It makes you turn into a big spiked boulder and roll around at high speed, dealing damage to anyone in your way. This is probably one of the best jutsus for carrying the flag or catching up to someone carrying the flag, making it an incredibly useful jutsu. Finally, his ultimate makes you turn huge and slam the ground, killing anyone in range. This ultimate can be quite good for team battles, and due to its low cooldown could be a good choice for defense types. On the other hand, it can be easily dodged by enemies because of its rather high cast time. Next up on the list at number 46 is Tsunade. Her first jutsu is very similar to Sakura's and Sarada's jutsu, where they all in some sort of form smash the ground. This one is by far the best out of those three, due to its recent buff, since now it has really good tracking and is honestly one of the best AoE attacks for heal types overall. Her second jutsu is a dashing attack that upon impact deals damage and reverses the controls of your opponent. This jutsu actually has quite good range and tracking, but even though the effect sounds good, experienced players will know how to deal with it. Finally, her ultimate gives you and your allies a little slug which heals them a bunch over 5 seconds. This ultimate is not necessarily bad, it's just that there's a lot of better options out there for heal types. I think a cooldown reduction on this ultimate would make it a lot more viable. Next up we have base Naruto at 45. His first jutsu is a simple, straightforward Rasengan. This jutsu has you rush at the opponent dealing good damage. It also has really good tracking and a very low activation time, making it still a viable option. His second jutsu is a Rasen Shuriken, which is a very simple yet effective ranged jutsu, serving best as a surprise attack from mid-range. It can be easily cancelled though, so you have to watch out for that. His ultimate is his weakest jutsu. You basically summon a big Rasengan and deal damage to anyone that you hit. Problem is that the cast time is simply too large and it's really easy to dodge for the enemy. Overall, I do have to say that I'm probably quite a bit biased here, since I have a soft spot for any Rasengan jutsu. And if this was a ranking based solely on how useful the jutsu are, base Naruto would probably be a little lower. Nevertheless, I do still think he's a good character. Sitting in at number 44, we have Killer Bee. His jutsu can sometimes be hard to land and they take a bit of time to get used to, but once you do, they turn into deadly weapons. His first jutsu creates two tentacles that first hit the opponent and strangle them, dealing damage and stunning them in the process. This is one of the best combo starters the attack type class has, due to the long stun that jutsu provides. His second jutsu makes you take a special stance, making you invulnerable to any jutsu apart from secret techniques, and deals big damage to anyone that comes close to you. This jutsu is perfect for stalling for time when you're in a pinch or defending/taking any objective. It can also be useful as a counter attack when someone is rushing you if you can time it correctly. Last but not least, his ultimate shrouds you in the 8 Tails cloak, completely regenerating your health and boosting your attack power. And upon second activation, your chakra erupts in a small dome dealing 30% of damage. This ultimate is useful when you're in a fight and low on health, but in my opinion it lags comparatively to some of the other attack type ultimates. Though it definitely does get bonus points for looking really cool. Coming up next, we have Haku at 43. His first jutsu is a simple projectile jutsu, where Haku launches 5 small icicles while backflipping. And if any of them hit the opponent, they get stunned for 5 seconds, giving you a huge window that allows you to get more hits in. This jutsu is pretty hard to land since there is no tracking, but on the other hand, you can hit more opponents at once since there are 5 projectiles in total. His second jutsu is a really unique one, allowing you to place a small trap that whenever it is stepped on, erupts and deals damage to the enemy. This jutsu is ideal for passively defending any objectives, and it stays on for quite a while as well, even allowing you to have 2 in the same spot at once. Finally, his ultimate creates a dome of ice mirrors in front of you, trapping any enemies inside of it and dealing damage for the next 5 seconds. This ultimate has 2 pretty big downsides. First of all, it isn't exactly guaranteed to hit, since your opponent has to be somewhat in front of you and you just have to use it at the right time. Second, it isn't a guaranteed kill either. On the other hand, it has a very low charge time, allowing you to sometimes use it even 3 times during a game. It's a great jutsu for defending or capturing bases, since you're invincible for the duration of the ultimate as well. Overall, Haku's jutsu may be situational, but in the right circumstances, they are very useful. Moving on, we have Rock Lee at 42. Rock Lee is another very simple character, but this allows him to deal massive amounts of damage with his simple combos. Both of his jutsu utilize taijutsu, first of which launches you at the opponent dealing 20% damage, bouncing the enemy off the floor, making you be able to continue your combo. His second jutsu does basically the same, but this time it launches the enemy into the air, once again making it possible to deal further damage. His ultimate perfectly aligns with the previously mentioned jutsu, giving you a huge boost for 15 seconds, and allowing you to go on a damage dealing rampage for its duration. Rock Lee is in my opinion a very fun character to play. Sure, his jutsu aren't anything super interesting or special, but they make perfect sense for the character, making him deserving of this spot on the list. At number 41, we have Base Kakashi. His first jutsu is just like Chidori, dealing 30% of damage to enemies upon hit. This is just a simple jutsu to deal good damage. It's easy to land and it gives you some movement utility whilst for example carrying the flag. His second jutsu is Sharingan, which basically gives you a second substitution and can be incredibly useful in a close range combat scenario. It allows you to outlast your opponent and gives you a big upper hand in any 1v1 fight. His ultimate is Kamui, which while being a very cool jutsu is kind of inconsistent. It's a one-hit kill ultimate, but from my experience it's pretty hard to land. The cool thing is that it can kill more than one enemy, making it perfect for when multiple people are capturing bases for example. But it's just way too situational in my opinion, as the enemy has to be basically completely stationary for you to landed, making it Kakashi's weakest jutsu in my mind. Next up at number 40 is Mei. Mei is a character whose jutsus are perfectly suited for base battle or defending in flag battle. Her first jutsu creates a big water pillar, pushing any enemies in range outside and dealing 10% damage, whilst not allowing anyone on the opposing team to step inside of it for its duration. It probably goes without saying how incredible this jutsu is for base battle, cancelling out many other ninjutsu from the enemy team. With her second jutsu, she spits out 5 large balls of lava, damaging anyone who gets hit and covering the floor with lava, which deals damage and slows down the enemies who step on it. This jutsu is again good for capturing or defending objectives, but it can be a bit of a challenge landing it where you want it to land. Her ultimate makes you exhale a mist out of your mouth, which lowers the defense of anyone inside of it whilst also dealing damage. It isn't an incredible damage dealing ultimate, but it can help you turn the tides of a team battle. Overall, Mei's jutsus are super good in certain scenarios. Unfortunately, outside of those, her abilities can become somewhat lackluster. Coming at number 39, we have one of the best villains in the show, Pain. Pain's jutsu revolve around pushing and pulling enemies, providing a lot of utility in the process. His first is the better of the two, I would say, pushing all enemies in a wide radius away and dealing a bunch of damage too. This jutsu is still heavily used to this day, showing just how good it is. It's obviously great for base and flag battle, but can also be a great counter when someone is trying to get to you. The second jutsu, Universal Pull, pulls the enemy to you as the name would suggest. Whilst the jutsu isn't as useful in my opinion as the first one, it's really fun to use on enemies that are desperately trying to get away from you. Finally, his ultimate uses a force to trap the enemy in a bunch of boulders, instantly killing them upon hitting the ground. This ultimate is an instant kill thankfully, but it takes a ridiculously long time for the gauge to fill up. It's still a very cool jutsu, but quite lackluster compared to the other ultimates out there. Next up on the ranking we have Boruto. His first jutsu is Vanishing Rasengan. He simply throws a Rasengan that vanishes before hitting the enemy, dealing 30% damage. This jutsu is basically just a ranged version of the Rasengan, dealing the same damage. The tracking on it isn't perfect, but it's still quite a lot of damage for a ranged jutsu. His second jutsu is Tornado High, which makes you charge the opponent, dealing damage upon impact. After which, you summon a Shadow Clone, which creates a little tornado, knocking your opponent up into the air and dealing further damage. This jutsu is a little bit dangerous to pull off since it does leave you vulnerable for the duration of the charge. But the upside is that if you hit the opponent, even if the hit is blocked, you still summon the tornado, which can lead to more attacks. His ultimate is probably my favorite from his arsenal. You once again do a dash to your opponent, and if you hit them, you kick them into the air and then slam them with a huge Rasengan. This jutsu is not a one-hit kill. It deals around 75% damage, but you're likely to get it 2 or even 3 times during a game, making it an amazing tool for finishing off kills or getting rid of annoying players on the enemy team. I would recommend using it from close range in order to not give your opponent any chance to dodge it, because otherwise your ultimate could go to waste. Coming down the list, we have Mitsuki at number 37. His first jutsu, Snake Thrust, makes the user extend their arms towards the enemy, pushing them away upon impact and dealing 30% damage. This jutsu can also break guard, and is a great counter to some defensive type jutsus like Sand Shield. His second jutsu is very similar, but this time the jutsu pulls the enemy towards you. Both of these jutsu deal 30% damage, meaning that if you can chain them together, you can deal 60%, which for a defense type is a crazy amount of damage. Finally, his ultimate is Sage Mode, which gives you a big attack and defense boost while also regenerating your health. The big disadvantage with the secret technique is that it disables your ninjutsu, making dealing damage in close combat your only option. The boost though, in my opinion, is quite a bit better than something like Rock Lee's ultimate. You can really feel the increase in stats with this one. It's best used when you're low on health and need to finish off a fight. Compared to some other ultimates, this one isn't as great, but I'm probably a little bit biased here since I've always loved Sage Mode. Next up on the list, we have the third Hokage, Hiruzen. His first jutsu, Dragon Flame Bomb, is a very wide chargeable fire jutsu. It deals about 30% damage on hit, making it a pretty decent choice if you're looking for more of a ranged jutsu for defense types. It does only travel in a straight line, but due to the jutsu's big width, it is quite easy to hit. The second jutsu, Earth Dragon Bullet, summons a dragon head which spits out mud bullets in the direction it is facing for 10 seconds. As you can imagine, this is a really good jutsu for capturing and defending objectives, as the dragon head doesn't really have any health, so it cannot be destroyed. While casting the jutsu, you also get super armor, meaning that it cannot be interrupted. His ultimate is the Reaper Death Seal. It is a very reliable one-hit kill, and you're likely to get it at least once in a game. Additionally, it significantly increases the respawn time of the enemy, which not only is, in my opinion, a really cool and unique feature, it can also be incredibly useful if you're able to eliminate, for example, the healer on the enemy team. I think the third Hokage as a character is kind of underrated. I know a lot of people don't rate him too highly, but I don't really see why. Sitting at number 35, we have base Sasuke. His first jutsu is Chidori. There's not really all that much to say here. This jutsu is just basically the same as Lightning Blade, good damage, good tracking, and good for carrying the flag. The second jutsu he provides is the Fireball jutsu. This is probably the simplest range jutsu in the game. It's just a fireball with really good tracking that deals 20% of damage to the enemy upon impact. Finally, his ultimate is probably one of my favorite jutsus in the series, Kirin. This jutsu summons a huge lightning dragon in the sky that crashes onto the enemy, dealing massive damage. The one big downside to this jutsu is that it isn't a one-hit kill. That said, it is great for dealing damage to multiple enemies, and it has a pretty low gauge fill time, meaning that you're likely to get it multiple times per game. Sasuke maybe doesn't provide the most groundbreaking jutsu, but they are all very reliable in my opinion. Next up at number 34, we have the first Hokage himself, Hashirama. Even though Hashirama is an attack type, his jutsu more accurately represents something you would probably expect from a range type. Not that this is a problem, since the jutsu still deal damage expected from the attack type class. His first jutsu is the Wood Dragon Jutsu. This jutsu is basically the same as Tobiyama's Water Dragon Jutsu, it just deals more damage. Even though it's not that unique, it's still pretty good due to its really low cast time. The dragon on it isn't perfect, but it's still a pretty consistent hit. His second jutsu, the Laughing Buddha Jutsu, summons two giant wooden hands that smash the opponent, dealing roughly 40% damage. This is what I would consider a high risk, high reward jutsu. It can be pretty difficult to hit, but when you do, it deals tons of damage and provides a window for even more attacks. It's best used when the opponent doesn't see you and is standing still, for example capturing a base or stealing a flag. Finally, his ultimate summons a Buddha with 1000 hands that strikes down on the opponents. This is probably the best AoE ultimate in the game. It can easily kill the entire enemy team if used in the right setting. I'll just let this clip speak for itself. Moving on to number 33, we have Kisame. Kisame is in my opinion one of the best base defensive jutsu types in the game, with jutsus that are useful in any game mode. His first jutsu, Water Style Shark Bomb, summons a big water shark that first circles around you and then launches itself at the enemy, dealing an enormous 40% damage if both parts of the jutsu connect. This jutsu is incredibly versatile as it can be used both as a close range and long range attack. His second jutsu makes you literally bury yourself underground for 5 seconds, making you invulnerable for the duration of the jutsu while also healing you for a small amount of health. This jutsu is great for getting outside of bad situations and buying yourself a little bit of time. Unfortunately, you cannot capture bases with it, but you can contest your own bases while using this jutsu, making it good for defending them. Finally, his ultimate summons a huge shark that deals 80% damage to anyone that gets hit by it. If the enemy team is damaged a little bit, his ultimate can easily get you more than one kill, or if anyone survives, you can just finish them off. Even better, it doesn't take too long for this jutsu to be available, making it possible to use this ultimate even multiple times during a single game. Overall, if you're someone who plays the game without wanting to spend any money on DLC, Kisame's jutsu are some of the best in the game for defense types. At number 32, we have Konohamaru. The main reason why I put him this high on the list is because of how unique his jutsu feel, even though I'm personally not the biggest fan of them. His first jutsu, Fire Style Burning Ash, is a 2-stage jutsu where you first spew out a cloud of ash that stuns the opponent and that can be ignited. The fun part of this jutsu is that it can be actually activated by a fire jutsu from your teammate, allowing for some fun combinations. His second jutsu, Fire Style Flame Meteors, basically summons a clone that acts as an automatic turret which shoots fireballs. Not only is this jutsu really cool and unique again, but it's great because opponents can lock in on the clone which is shooting the fire bullets, making it a great distraction which gives you an opportunity to strike. Finally, his ultimate summons Enra, who latches onto any enemies that are within range and deals damage for the next 15 seconds, while also disabling their substitutions. Upon second activation, you create a giant clawed monkey hand that grabs onto the opponent and it instantly kills them. The range on the second part of the jutsu isn't great, but it's still a one-hit kill. Overall, I think Konohamaru is a really unique character in the game, which earns him this spot on the list. Next up at number 31, we have Obito. Obito is the definition of a defensive character, offering some very useful jutsu. His first jutsu, Uchiha Flame Formation, shrouds you and the allies within range in a flame, which protects you from a single enemy attack. If an enemy attacks you up close, they also get blasted away and dealt 20% damage. On top of this jutsu can also protect you from one-hit kill ultimates. This is a great jutsu for team fights, allowing you to basically protect your entire team for one hit. The only problem is that you have to use it so that as many allies get the boost as possible, making it quite better in coordinated teams. The second jutsu, Kamui Climax, has two major effects. First of all, it makes you completely invulnerable as long as you're not attacking anyone, making it amazing for carrying the flags or capturing objectives. Secondly, it also gives you a pretty significant power boost, meaning that you can create some one-hit kill ultimates that don't usually deal enough damage. This jutsu is in my opinion Obito's best, due to its pretty strong usability in any game mode. His ultimate, Fire Style Bomb Blast Dance, has you bellow out a huge fire spiral, dealing around 75% damage to enemies hit. The ultimate isn't bad, but it can sometimes be pretty challenging to hit, making it Obito's weakest jutsu in my opinion. If Obito was the definition of a defensive type, then our next entry is the definition of a range type, that of course being Konan. Angelic Advent, her first jutsu, just straight up gives you wings and the ability to fly. This is not only good for getting around the map, but it also allows you to attack the enemy with kunai while being somewhat safe. I would recommend using this jutsu mainly to support other battles. Don't try to get yourself into a 1v1 situation while using it, since if the enemy gets close to you, you're kind of screwed. Her second jutsu, Shikigami Dance Shield, summons a large wave of paper, stunning anyone that gets hit by it for 5 seconds. This jutsu can also travel through walls. It is a great stun, but it travels pretty slowly, so you do have to be smart when using it. Your best tactic is to try to surprise the enemy with it. Shikigami Dance Storm, Konan's ultimate, summons a huge tornado of paper, disabling all jutsus of enemies inside it, apart from substitution jutsus. This ultimate has an incredibly big range, making it one of the best teamfight ultimates in the game. Its charge time also isn't too big, meaning you're likely to get it more than once in a game. Correctly using this in something like combat battle can straight up just win you the entire thing. Overall, Konan has great jutsu for supporting your team. You're probably not gonna deal massive damage with her, but you can be a big nuisance to the enemy team. Up next is who I consider to be the best base game defense type in the game, Gaara. Gaara's ninjutsu are arguably the best for defending any type of objective, but are also versatile enough to be used in other situations as well. His first jutsu, Sand Shield, creates a sand dome around you that cannot be broken through or accessed by your opponent. Unless the enemy team has a counter to this jutsu, it's completely impossible to stop you from taking a base or defending a flag. The amount of counters this jutsu has is quite a lot now, but it's incredibly useful still. His second jutsu is Sand Shower, which creates a sandy cloud that rains down sand drops which deal damage to the opponent. Once again, very good for defending objectives or dealing damage to a boss. If you're able to catch an enemy with this jutsu, it can be very difficult for them to get out of it, and you're likely to deal good damage to them as well. Gaara's ultimate, Grand Sand Mausoleum, creates a pile of sand in front of you, trapping any enemy inside and encapsulating them into a small pyramid, which after a little while will squeeze them and instantly kill them. Even though this ultimate is probably the weakest part of Gaara's arsenal, it's still pretty good. Due to the fact that it has quite a small activation time, it's not hard to trap multiple opponents, granting you some fast kills unless they have a defense buff. Even though Gaara isn't as OP as he was at the start of the game, he's still a defensive staple and his jutsu should not be underestimated even in the current meta. Coming down the list, we have Ten-Tails Obito at number 28. This version of Obito is a true attack type, having ninjutsu that deal a bunch of damage to his enemies. His first jutsu, Truth-Seeking Scourge, shoots out a black beam, dealing massive damage to anyone that gets hit by it. If you hold down the jutsu button, you can also move the beam a little bit, allowing you to change the direction of the attack. It's also worth mentioning that you are vulnerable while using this attack, making it a bit of a risky move. His second jutsu is Cross Lantern, which creates a cross on the ground which erupts with lava, dealing damage to enemies caught. The pattern can be a little bit difficult to get used to, but if you use this in a crowded area, you're likely to deal good damage to everyone. The jutsu also disables substitutions for anyone hit by it for the following 8 seconds. Finally, Obito's ultimate is Divine Blade, which creates a double helix blade with which you then create a massive shockwave, killing any enemies hit in the path that don't have full health, otherwise it leaves them with 1 HP. This ultimate can be difficult to hit, as the width of the shockwave isn't huge. That being said, it does travel through walls, so it can be kind of a good surprise attack. It's also best not to lock onto anyone when using this, as the jutsu tracks the enemy and can ruin an opportunity to kill multiple opponents. All of 6 past Obito's jutsu deal really good damage. The only problem is the consistency of actually hitting the enemies. Next up at number 27 we have Might Guy, who is quite the attacking force. The first jutsu, Youthful Roar, has you shout out for half a second, boosting any allies around you and also stunning close by enemies. This is a great jutsu for when you're getting targeted by multiple people, allowing you to get out of these situations easily. Additionally, it's just a great stun in general. His second jutsu, Dynamic Entry, has you jump slightly back and launch at your opponent with a flying kick, dealing around 20% of damage on impact. This is a decent jutsu for stunning combos and works well with Youthful Roar. Its damage isn't amazing though, and it can sometimes be challenging to gauge the distance at which this jutsu will connect, since it has kind of a deceptively short travel distance. Last but not least, his ultimate, 8 Inner Gates Formation, is not only a really cool ultimate but also very useful. Upon activation, it fully heals you and gives you access to the Evening Elephant, which is an incredibly good ninjutsu, basically acting as a very fast wind bullet. Not only that, you can activate it a second time and use Night Guy, killing anyone that gets caught by this deadly kick. You do die after using this ultimate, and even though it can be seen as a downside, it makes complete sense. This extra def is more than made up in my opinion by the sheer power of this ultimate. There is no doubt you can theoretically kill the entire team if it's used correctly. Moving down the list at number 26 we have Karma Boruto. His first jutsu, Boruto Stream, is basically a combination of Rasengan and Sharingan. The user makes a couple of hand signs, launching a Rasengan at the enemy upon release of the jutsu button. On top of that, you can hold down the jutsu button for as long as you want to, and if anyone hits you while you're in this state, you're gonna stun the enemy, teleport behind them and hit them with the Rasengan. The second jutsu he brings is Thunderclap Arrow. This jutsu has two parts. In the first part, you spew out a pool of water, stunning enemies that get hit by it. Not only that, but the pool of water stays in the location for a bit, acting as a trap. Upon second activation, you fire a lightning beam at the puddle, electrifying any enemies inside of it. This jutsu is amazing for base battle, because not only is it good at defending a base itself, it is also a hard counter to Gaara's Sand Shield, making it an amazing choice for this game mode. Finally, his ultimate, Karma Lynchpin, creates a field of energy, nullifying almost all jutsu in the area and boosting your attack and defense after it's over. This ultimate also resets the stack of your enemies while depleting their secret technique gauge. This is probably the best ultimate in the game for base battle. The only disadvantage it has is the fact that it's not exactly a thrilling ride to use it. Coming in at number 25, we have Reanimated Nagato. His first jutsu is Chukushoto, which summons a lizard that makes you invisible for 15 seconds. You're not completely invisible while using this jutsu, enemies might be able to see you at the right angle, but most importantly they cannot lock onto you, making this a great jutsu for base and flag battle. On top of that, it also protects you for one hit. The second jutsu is Shurado, which upon activation grants you access to two new jutsu. The first one, Arm Cannon, is just a simple projectile. Even though it might not sound like much, this jutsu has a very low cooldown and deals quite a big amount of damage, making it very annoying to play against. The second jutsu is Fire Arrowhead, which launches missiles into the air, hitting the area where the enemy was during activation. This is a good doodle for attacking objectives, but it does not track, meaning it's impossible to hit any moving targets. Nonetheless, Shurado is an absolutely amazing jutsu for range types. Finally, his ultimate summons the Ghetto Statue, killing anyone that gets hit by its projectile dragon. This ultimate does have quite a long activation time, but on the other hand, its area effect is quite wide, making it still pretty usable. One big downside though is that you get left with 1 HP and no substitution jutsu after using it, meaning you better make sure that you kill any opponent inside while performing this jutsu. Next up at 24, we have the Demon of the Hidden Mist himself, Zabuza. His first jutsu, Demon Hunter, gives you super armor and makes you fly towards the enemy, slicing them when you get in their range. This jutsu is kind of an unstoppable force, because the super armor makes it that you cannot stop the jutsu when it gets activated. It doesn't always hit though, since the swing takes a little while. The second jutsu is the iconic Water Prison jutsu. You once again charge at your opponent, but this time you trap them in a water bubble upon impact. The enemy is then trapped for the next 7 seconds and continually takes damage while inside the bubble. This jutsu is great, but it does have one pretty big weakness, that being the fact that your allies can cancel it if they hit the enemy, making this jutsu mainly good for coordinated teams. Still though, it's really fun to use. Finally, his ultimate is the Hidden Mist jutsu. This jutsu shrouds the entire game area in a thick mist for 20 seconds. It doesn't sound like much, but it is very hard to see anything for anyone on the opposite side of this ultimate, giving your team a huge upper hand in any team fight. Additionally, it does not take long at all to fill up, meaning you'll be able to use it ultimate 2 or maybe even 3 times during the game, making it one of the better defensive type ultimates in Shinobi Striker. Going down the list, we have the best base game healer in the game, Kabuto. His first jutsu, Cellular Activation, is probably the best healing type jutsu in terms of keeping yourself alive. When activated, it rapidly heals you for the next 7 seconds. This jutsu is kind of crazy. You can literally go from being almost dead to over 50% of health in a matter of moments, making it very difficult to kill you. But the most annoying jutsu Kabuto has is by far Chakra Scalpel. This jutsu makes you charge at your opponent, slicing them and disabling their ninjutsu for the next few seconds. This jutsu is really easy to land as it has really good range and tracking for close range attack, making it one of the best, if not the best, close range heal type jutsu for fighting enemies. If you manage to hit this jutsu, you gain a huge advantage over your opponent in almost any 1v1 situation. His ultimate, Feather Illusion jutsu, creates a big dome of feathers, stunning any enemies inside of it for 5 seconds. You can stun the entire enemy team with this, and I'm sure I don't have to explain why that is so good. Overall, Kabuto has some really good jutsu. Chakra Scalpel has been nerfed a couple of times, which pushed him down the list for me, but apart from that, he's just a great character. Coming in number 22 is another amazing base game master, Itachi. Itachi's first jutsu is Amaterasu, which creates a black flame that deals damage to the enemy over 10 seconds. This jutsu can be hard to hit, but when you do, it can be very annoying to deal with for the opponent. This jutsu works best in game modes where the enemies have to be stationary, since that's the easiest way to land this jutsu, such as base and flag battle. His second jutsu is Phoenix Flame's Scarlet Claw, which makes you spit out 4 fire projectiles dealing around 20% of all hit. This is a simple range jutsu, but the projectiles are very fast, and both the range and tracking tracking on them are probably the best out of any fireball jutsu, making it effective even though the damage isn't amazing. Itachi's ultimate is Totsuka Blade, which makes you summon a half a Susanoo and strike down with its blade, killing anyone in the way. I don't see this ultimate being used a lot, which I think is a shame because it's actually pretty useful in the right circumstances. The activation time is low, and if used in the correct place, this ultimate can kill multiple people. Overall, Itachi's jutsu don't offer anything the game hasn't seen before, even compared to other base game characters, but they just are very good at doing what they need to do. Moving down the list, we have one of the strongest characters in the series, Madara. His first jutsu is by far the best fire jutsu in the entire game. The Majestic Destroyer Flame creates 6 huge fireballs to deal an incredible 40% damage when they hit the opponent. It has great tracking and is so wide that it's almost impossible to dodge it. His second jutsu is very similar to Kisame's underground jutsu. It sinks you underground and makes you very fast and invulnerable. Just as Kisame's jutsu, it is definitely very useful for things like carrying the flag or contesting bases. That being said, it is not exactly a super original jutsu for a DLC character. Madara's ultimate, Heavenly Concealed, creates a humongous boulder that falls onto the enemy. This ultimate is a little slow, so it can definitely be dodged. That said, it is a one-hit kill, and if used correctly can definitely kill multiple people. Or at the very least, move them away from an objective, for example. Madara is a good character, but I do have to say he mainly earns his spot on this list because of his first jutsu, which is arguably one of the best range type jutsus in the game. Next up on our list, we have the original Minato at 20. His first jutsu puts down a kunai that upon second activation teleports you to its location. Now, not only do I think this is really cool, but it's also incredibly versatile. First of all, obviously great for something like flag battle and just getting around, but it can also be used as a second substitution jutsu, making it almost like a better Sharingan since you can choose when to use it. His second jutsu is Minato's iconic Flying Raijin level 2, where he throws down a kunai and when it hits the opponent, you teleport above them and smash them with a Rasengan. This jutsu deals a bunch of damage, and once again, it's super cool in my opinion. I do recommend using it at a closer distance since it can be prone to missing. Finally, his ultimate makes you throw out a bunch of kunai, and if they hit your enemy, you instantly kill them in a rapid combo. This is kind of an underrated ultimate in my opinion, and it's so much better than reanimating Minato's ultimate. It has a pretty low cast time and charges up fast as well, not to mention you can actually kill multiple people with it. Out of all the base game masters, Minato is probably the most interesting one in my opinion, providing some jutsu that are still incredibly fun to play with even after all these years. Coming up at number 19, we have Deidara. His first jutsu is C2 Dragon, which summons a big light dragon that attacks any enemy in range. This, in my opinion, is probably the best summoning jutsu in the game for protecting or capturing an objective. It stays in for 15 seconds and has a decent amount of health, making it quite a bit tedious to deal with. The second jutsu Deidara offers is Twin Birds, summoning 2 big clay birds which chase the enemy and explode upon contact. Apart from the fact that the birds are quite slow, this is one of the best range type jutsus in the game. The birds have incredible tracking, they follow the opponent for a while and deal 40% of damage in total, making it an incredibly deadly jutsu for range types. Deidara's ultimate is C4 Karura. It creates a huge clay clone of himself that explodes, killing anyone in proximity. Until not so long ago, this ultimate wasn't really anything that amazing, but a recent buff made it one of the best range type ultimates in the game in my opinion. The range on this jutsu was greatly increased, meaning it's much easier to get kills with it, making it probably Deidara's best jutsu. Coming in at number 18, we have a great heal type, Sakura Last Battle. Her first jutsu makes you release a bunch of healing chakra, recovering your own health and buffing your allies in the process. This is no super flashy cool jutsu, but it does exactly what it is intended to do. It heals you and gives your allies a substantial boost, instantly giving you a better chance in a team fight. Her second jutsu is Hard Light, which shrouds your body in chakra, giving you super armor for 8 seconds and healing you if anyone hits you in the process of performing this jutsu. It also repels any enemy around you. This jutsu is great because it does so many things at once. First of all, the super armor is obviously great for flag and base battle, and it stays on for a really long time too. Secondly, if timed correctly, not only can you heal yourself, but you can also push away any enemy at the start of your combo, making this one of the most versatile healer jutsus in the game. Finally, Sakura's ultimate is the 100 Healings jutsu, which not only gives you a pretty big buff, but also heals all of your allies no matter how far away they are, and upon second activation you smash the ground, dealing around 80% of damage to the enemies that get caught in your punch. This is one of the better healing type ultimates in the game, as the buff it gives you is pretty crazy and healing all of your allies is always incredibly valuable. The second part of the ultimate isn't anything amazing, but it's still a decent attack, and even if it wasn't there at all, this ultimate would still be awesome. Coming down the list, we have Kaguya. Kaguya is a character that brings some really great close and range offensive jutsus to the heal types. while also having one of the coolest ultimates in the entire game. Her first jutsu is 80 Gods Vacuum Fist, which unleashes a barrage of huge punches at your opponent. This is a great jutsu for close-up encounters with the enemy, but you do have to land the first punch, otherwise you're gonna be left wide open. The second jutsu is Murderous Bone Ash, which makes you throw out 2 bone spikes at your opponent, draining their health if they land. The cool thing about this jutsu is that if it misses, it gets redirected at your opponent. Apart from that, this jutsu feels a little bit underwhelming, more akin to what you might expect from a ninja tool. Finally, Kaguya's ultimate is Ame no Minaka, which transports any enemy within range into your dimension, giving you a huge stat boost in the process. You can swap between an ice and magma dimension by using the ninjutsu button. Not only is this jutsu basically a guaranteed kill if you can trap the right amount of enemies, but it also takes them out of the game for a good amount of time. Not to mention, this is by far the most unique ultimate in the game, rightfully earning Kaguya this spot on the list. Moving on, we have reanimated Minato at number 16. His first jutsu is Celestial Air Slice, which makes you throw out 8 kunai, and if any of them hit the enemy, you perform a 10 guaranteed hit combo. The projectiles feel similar to Haku's Icicle Swallows, but they are significantly easier to hit. This jutsu doesn't deal massive damage, but it's great at stopping your opponent in his track, not to mention you can catch more than one enemy in the effect range of the combo. His second jutsu, Flying Raijin Guiding Thunder, creates a big dome of chakra which absorbs any projectile that hits it, apart from secret techniques. Secondly, it also boosts the attack power and defense of any allies inside the dome. This is an amazing jutsu for defending any objective, but you can definitely also make a good use of it in something like combat battle as well. Lastly, let's talk about his ultimate. You take a stance and throw kunai at your opponent, and if any of them hit, you teleport straight to the opponent and one-shot them with a Rasengan. This ultimate kind of sucks in my opinion. While recording for this video, I tried to use it multiple times, but I didn't land it even a single time. It also takes forever to charge up, meaning you're actually likely to not even get it in a game. The activation time on it is also just way too long, allowing your opponent to get away. In summary, reanimating Minato's 2-bait jutsu are pretty awesome, but he's unfortunately brought down by his lackluster ultimate. At number 15, we have the first puppet master introduced into the game, Sasori. His first jutsu, Thousand Hand, transforms you into the third Kazekage puppet, allowing you to fly for 8 seconds. Upon second input, you create copies of your right arm and attack the enemy with them, dealing damage and poisoning them in the process. This jutsu provides decent utility and decent damage dealing potential, tightly put together in one jutsu. Separately, it wouldn't be anything great, but together this jutsu offers a lot of value. Iron Sand Unleashed, Sasori's second jutsu, makes you tag the enemy with a projectile made out of iron sand, which upon contact damages and poisons the enemy, while also creating a rectangle made of iron sand above them. A second input of the button will make the rectangle explode with spikes in a big area of effect. This is in my opinion an absolutely amazing jutsu, as all of the spikes actually poison the hit opponents, giving you a huge upper hand in a long team fight. Finally, Sasori's ultimate summons 100 puppets that attack the enemy. This is definitely Sasori's weakest jutsu, as it's just a one-hit kill at best. It looks cool, but the charge time is in my opinion way too long for it to be a super viable option. Nonetheless, Sasori is definitely a really good first entry into the puppeteers. Next up, we have a Boruto character, Kawaki. His first ninjutsu is Karma Linchpin, which creates a sphere of chakra in front of you that absorbs basically any projectile that hits it, while also increasing your secret technique gauge and doing the opposite to your opponents. This is the best jutsu for getting your ultimate more frequently in a game, while also making it possible to catch the attention of your enemies and allow your team some free space. The second jutsu Kawaki offers is Imperial Wrath, which is split into 2 parts. Firstly, you charge your opponent with a shield-like arm and reset their substitution stock if you hit them. Upon second activation, you swipe them with a scythe-like arm, dealing further damage if you connect. This jutsu is very simple, but if used correctly can be devastating. The first part is pretty easy to hit, and then you can simply wait until the enemy gets back up and swipe them with the scythe again. Finally, Kawaki's ultimate is Ritual Destruction, which first makes you charge your opponent, and if you hit them, pierce them with branches that stick out of their back. And lastly, create a huge explosion behind the enemy, killing anyone that gets caught in it. This ultimate is very easy to hit if you are patient enough. And if you're in a team fight, it's not unlikely that you will kill multiple people, making it one of the better attacking type ultimates in my opinion. Moving down the list with Ishiki at number 13. Ishiki's first jutsu is Sukuna Hikuna. This is basically like a Sharingan with additional effects. First of all, you are completely invulnerable to range attacks for 10 seconds. And if you get hit by a close range attack, you substitute away with time space hop. Additionally, after the substitute, you can hit the enemy with a follow-up attack which will pierce them using black rods. I don't think I have to explain how good this jutsu is. Not only is it arguably the best jutsu for protecting yourself, it also allows you to deal damage to the enemies in the process. His second jutsu is Karma, which first makes you charge the enemy, and if you hit them, grab them by the neck and mark them with the Karma seal, dealing damage along the way. Secondly, you can input this jutsu again and teleport behind the marked enemy and attack them with a dive kick, getting a big speed increase if you hit them. The speed increase after landing this is not to be underestimated, as it is really significant. Otherwise, this jutsu is just a great option for dealing damage to enemies as a defense type. Finally, Ishiki's ultimate is Vast Dark Heavens, which is sort of like a prolonged version of Hashirama's ultimate. You basically create these big cubes that fall onto the ground dealing damage, and it removes the enemy's HUD in the process if they get hit. This jutsu is really good for controlling an area and basically means a definitive win in a team fight if you use it at the right time. At number 12, we have the most recent DLC introduced into the game, Karma Kawaki. Kawaki's first jutsu is Daikokuten Shokatsu. It makes you throw out a shrunken stake out of another dimension, which upon impact stuns the enemy and drops a massive cube on them. This is a very simple yet effective jutsu to use. The projectile is incredibly fast, and even though the tracking isn't great, it's still very easy to hit. On top of that, the cube can damage anyone, not just the hit player. Kawaki's second jutsu is Sukuna Hikuna, God Hunter. It shrinks you down and launches you at the opponent, dealing damage if you manage to connect. This is one of the best engagement jutsus in the game for attack types, as you're completely invulnerable while charging your opponent, making this the perfect jutsu for counter attacks. Finally, let's talk about Kawaki's ultimate, Karma Progression. It gives you a really big boost in both speed and attack, while also changing your strong attack into the cube AoE from your first jutsu. You will also activate Sukuna Hikuna while in this state, making you completely invulnerable to any projectile attacks apart from certain secret techniques. Finally, an additional input will make you spew out fireballs in front of you, and if you hit anyone, you will chase them with a follow-up attack that is very similar to normal Kawaki's Ritual Destruction. This is one of the strongest transformation ultimates in the game, and alongside of that you also get a great second input attack. It's everything you could want from an ultimate. Next up on the list we have Last Battle Sasuke, who not only brings arguably the best close range defensive jutsu, but also probably the flashiest ninjutsu defense types have in their arsenal. His first jutsu is just that. Flying Thrust Heavenly Hand Power first makes you throw out a kunai, which after further activation makes you teleport to its location and hit the targeted enemy with a Chidori. Now, is this perhaps just a glorified Chidori? Yes, kinda, but that doesn't mean it's not really fun to use. Due to the surprise factor, I also found out that it's actually a lot easier to hit than a normal Chidori, and it allows you to travel big distances during flag battle. Sasuke's second jutsu is Susanoo Armor, which basically makes you completely invulnerable to any physical attacks for 10 seconds. I don't think I need to explain why this jutsu is really good, it kind of speaks for itself. It does get pierced by a lot of ninjutsu, but if you take into consideration that it lasts for 10 seconds and you can attack while using it, you realize that it would be completely broken otherwise. Sasuke's ultimate is Indra's Arrow, which creates a perfect Susanoo that flies up into the air and shoots out a huge arrow on the ground, creating 4 areas of damage in a diamond shape, killing anyone caught instantly. I have mixed feelings about this ultimate. On one hand, the area is quite large and you're likely to get at least 1 kill with it. On the other hand, it does take a bit to charge up, and the activation time isn't exactly short either. It's not a bad ultimate by any means, it's just not the best for defense types in my opinion. At number 10, we have the most recent entry into the defense type class, Young Gaara. His first jutsu is Sand Tsunami, which creates a huge wave of sand that you stand on top of and that deals damage to anyone that gets hit by it. Secondly, after you're done with your surfing, the wave leaves behind sand wherever it was. You can activate the jutsu again, damaging anyone that is currently standing on the sand. This is an amazing jutsu for crowd control, or just any team fight in general, as not getting hit by the wave can be quite the challenge. His second jutsu is Sand Burial, which makes you launch sand hands at the opponent that upon impact deal a little damage, but most importantly put the enemy into a sand coffin. After which you can press the jutsu button again and squeeze the enemy, dealing more damage. This jutsu is an amazing stun while also being great for stunning combos, as you can actually deal damage to the opponent in the coffin before squeezing them. His ultimate turns you into Shukaku, allowing you to control the tail beast for 27 seconds. This is a really cool ultimate, as not only is it really unique, but it's also pretty reliable for getting kills. The only downside to it is that you can't actually move while being in this form. At number 9 on the list we have Shisui. His first jutsu is Halo Dance, which makes you charge at your opponent and slash them 3 times with a sword. This jutsu is pretty straightforward. If you hit your opponent, you're guaranteed good damage since the enemy is not allowed to substitute while you're performing the combo. Shisui's second jutsu is where he really shines. It makes you throw down a Demon Wind Shuriken, stunning anyone close to you and giving you a big speed boost for 13 seconds. After which, you can recall the shuriken back to you, and if it hits the opponent on the way back, it will stun them and seal them in the jutsu for 5 seconds. This jutsu has a bunch of amazing properties and use cases, and it will take quite a while for me to name all of them. But just to mention a few, it gives you a huge speed boost. It can also be used to interrupt your opponent while also being deadly in combos. It has a bit of a learning curve, but it's most definitely worth it. Finally, Shisui's ultimate is Koto Amatsukami. This jutsu has two phases. After first activation, it will basically give you and your entire team infinite Sharingan for 15 seconds, making everyone invulnerable. After second activation, it will give the entire enemy team reverse controls and also imprint a big Sharingan symbol on their screen, making it pretty difficult to see. This is the perfect ultimate for changing the tides of the game, and it works basically in any game mode too. It does take pretty long to charge up, so sometimes you may not even get it, but it's still a great ultimate in my opinion. Following up, we have one of the best heal types in the game, the last battle version of Naruto and number 8. Naruto's first jutsu is the Truth Seeking Orb, which first engulfs the user in a black orb, making him completely invulnerable to most damage. And upon second activation, fires 6 Truth Seeking Orbs at the targeted enemy. This is the perfect jutsu for heal types, for when they are getting targeted by the entire enemy team and they need some time for their stocks to fill back up. It also allows you to travel quite fast by way of levitating, and you can also use it to protect your flag when needed. It does have some counters that do pierce it, but they are few and far between. His second jutsu is Rebirth, which not only heals you and your allies within range, but also has the ability to revive up to 2 fallen allies. This is one of the best jutsus for quick and efficient healing. It is very simple and it uses that fact to its benefit. The range isn't great, but apart from that, this is basically the perfect healing jutsu. Finally, Naruto's ultimate is Massive Resent Shuriken. This jutsu creates the 3-headed Kurama, which then throws 2 huge Resent Shurikens at the targeted opponent. This is one of the best, if not the best, ultimate for heal types. It's basically a guaranteed kill, but most importantly, it revives all of your allies or fully heals them if they are already alive. On top of that, it also restocks their ninjutsu, just an absolutely amazing ultimate to have on your team. At number 7, we have a top 3 range type in the game, Temari. Her first jutsu is Wind Scythe Jutsu, which creates 4 whirlpools that trap the hit opponents, dealing damage over a short period of time. This is the perfect jutsu for crowd control, as even though you cannot direct the whirlpools, they are big enough that hitting someone with them isn't a problem at all, which makes it possible to give your allies some breathing space in heated team battles. Temari's second jutsu is Blade Dance, which summons a weasel with a scythe that flies out towards the targeted opponent, creating a tornado around them that deals damage over the following 7 seconds. Additionally, after the time has expired, the weasel reappears and strikes the opponent again, throwing them into the air. This jutsu is very unique, as there is no other jutsu with such a delayed effect. The fact of the second attack makes it much easier for you to be offensive, since even if you get hit, the weasel will still appear. Lastly, Temari's ultimate is Sea Dragon, which creates a giant tornado which sucks all the enemy remotely close to it, spinning them around and dealing damage for the next 15 seconds. This until recently was the best range ultimate in the game, as it basically completely eliminates the enemy team from the map for 15 seconds, allowing you to do anything you want. It also deals 60% to anyone that gets caught in it from the very start, making it offensively amazing as well. Coming in number 6, we have another version of Naruto, that being Naruto Baryon mode. His first jutsu is Baryon Bullet Barrage, which unleashes a flurry of punches at your opponent that also reduces their ultimate gauge by 1% for each landed punch. This jutsu deals very good damage, and it has some of the best tracking in the game for a close range attack, making it an easy choice for almost any attack build. The second jutsu this version of Naruto brings to the table is Baryon Tailbreaker, which is by far the best defensive jutsu attack types have to this day. It shrouds you in Baryon Chakra and automatically attacks any opponent close to you for 10 seconds. It's not the ultimate defense like Susanoo armor, but it's best you got if you're playing as an attack type. It's also amazing for attacking someone, allowing you to create some killer combos. Last but definitely not least, Naruto's ultimate is Baryon mode, which once again shrouds you in Baryon Chakra, this time activating the mode fully. This ultimate lasts 20 seconds and completely changes your loadout. Your two ninjutsu are basically teleportation jutsu, with the second one also allowing you to damage opponents with a kick. This basically makes it impossible to catch you if you're carrying the flag. Finally, once you're close to the 20-second time limit, you can activate the ultimate again, hitting the targeted enemy with a Rasengan that deals massive damage or instantly kills if the enemy is a heal or range type. This is arguably the best attack type ultimate in the game, especially for flag battle, as it basically assures you to get at least one flag. Next up on the list we have Six Paths Madara, who even though is a heal type, doesn't exactly play like one. His first jutsu is Thunder Blast, which releases a purple shockwave in front of you, stunning anyone caught and also dealing decent damage. You can hold down the jutsu button and charge this jutsu up to 3 times, increasing not only the range but also resetting the opponent's substock and decreasing their defense. The reason this jutsu is great is because it is not possible to interrupt it after you start using it. Yeah, sure, you'll take some damage, but you'll deal a lot more back if you use it correctly. Madara's second jutsu is Limbo Border Jail, which creates 4 clones that are invisible to your opponent. Upon second input, the clothes will either travel in a straight direction or directly to you, depending if you're within the perimeter of the created clones. This is another great get out of jail free card for when you're being attacked and you're out of subs and you can just call in the clones and deal damage yourself. Finally, Madara's ultimate is Infinite Tsukuyomi, which upon first input will stun all the enemies on the field, making them kneel down and look upon the moon. And after second input, traps them in a webbing, leaving them with a single HP. This is by far the best ultimate in the game under one condition: you have a coordinated team. The reason is that the stun your enemies are placed under can be interrupted if your allies hit them, which will then not allow you to use the second part of the jutsu. But if your team knows what you're planning, it is very easy to kill the entire enemy team with this, since all the opponents are left with 1 HP. Moving down the list at number 4, we have reanimated Itachi, who arguably maybe isn't the best heal type in the game, but he's my personal favorite. His first jutsu is Tsukuyomi, which puts the targeted enemy into a genjutsu, dealing damage over a short period of time for which they cannot move. This jutsu is similar to Amaterasu in that it's not super easy to land because the enemy can simply dodge it by moving, meaning it's only effective on stationary targets. His second jutsu on the other hand is objectively incredible. Yasaka Beats creates a half a Susanoo, which then fires a big projectile at the enemy, creating a huge explosion on impact. This is by far the best dealing damage jutsu heal types have, and it has incredible range, tracking, and damage. And would be great in basically any class, but it is desperately needed in the healing class. Due to the Susanoo, it also makes you completely invulnerable while casting it, making it even better. Itachi's ultimate is Izanami, which is probably the most complicated ultimate in the game. After first activation, it starts a 10-second timer, which after it runs down, returns all the enemies back to where they were at the start of those 10 seconds. Additional manual input will pull all the enemies to sleep and reset their stocks apart from their secret technique gauge. But it also obscures half of your vision and disables your ninjutsu for 8 seconds. The first part of this ultimate is probably one of the coolest mechanics in the entire game, being also incredibly useful in flag battle. The second part of this jutsu is always gonna be viable, but it comes at a cost. With all that being said, this ultimate is still one of my favorites in the game just for the sheer originality of it, and nobody can argue that, even if it may not be the most meta jutsu in Shinobi Striker. We're getting close to the end of the list, and to start off the top 3 we have the adult version of Naruto. Adult Naruto is an absolute damage dealing machine, and in terms of pure offense is probably the best character in the game. His first jutsu is Rasen Rampage, which has you attack the opponent with 4 Rasengans using your chakra cloak. This jutsu deals amazing damage, and apart from the fact that the range can be a little bit deceiving, is a perfect choice for attack types. The second jutsu is Kurama Twin Impact, which makes you smash the ground with a mini-tailed Beast Bomb Rasengan, dealing damage to any enemies close by. Using this in a crowded area is absolutely devastating to the enemy team, since it deals 25% damage to anyone that gets hit by it, allowing your team to get ahead in a teamfight. Finally, Adult Naruto's ultimate is Kurama Link Mode, which shrouds the user in Kurama Chakra, fully healing them and giving them a big boost in basically every stat, as well as replenishing the ninjutsu stocks of everyone on your team. You can input the jutsu again and blast your enemies with a laser using Kurama's big head. The great thing about this ultimate is that it lasts for 30 seconds, which is very long for an ultimate. Overall, Adult Naruto is the perfect character for anyone who just wants to deal massive damage without having to think much about it. Our run-up is probably my personal favorite character, Adult Sasuke. Adult Sasuke's first jutsu is Flame Lighting, which is basically a combination of Universal Pull and Amaterasu, as it pulls the targeted enemy close to you and then strikes them down with the black flames. This jutsu is very fun to use, as it never gets old seeing your opponent helplessly fly towards you, being unable to do anything against it. It's also obviously very good when you're trying to stop the enemy from taking your flag or base, just simply pulling them away from it and dealing damage in the process. His second jutsu is my personal favorite in the game, Heavenly Hand Power. This jutsu is very simple, it swaps places with your opponent. The amount of cool stuff you can do with it in the game is basically limitless, and even though the range of it is sometimes frustrating, it's still incredibly fun. Its obvious uses are in flag battle and base battle, when you can stop your opponent from capturing the objective or getting closer to it yourself. But even when fighting someone one-on-one, it still does a great job at confusing your opponent, allowing you to catch them off by surprise. Finally, Adult Sasuke's ultimate is Takemi Kazuchi no Kami, which creates a perfect Susanoo and makes it charge forward with a Chidori. This is a great ultimate, as it instantly kills almost any opponent in your way. It also travels for quite a while, meaning it's not uncommon to get more than 2 kills with this ultimate. Now, finally coming in first on this list is Karma Progression Boruto. His first jutsu is Flash Slice, making you charge your opponent and if you connect, teleport above them, slashing them and causing them to bounce off the floor. This is probably the best close range jutsu range types have at their disposal. It deals good damage and allows you to continue attacking while the enemy is still mid-air. Boroshiki's second jutsu creates a Rasengan in your right hand, which upon release tracks the opponent and deals damage to them. This jutsu is amazing for mainly one reason: it gives you super armor, meaning it basically cannot be interrupted apart from a few jutsu after you start using it, allowing you to wait for as long as you want for the perfect moment to fire it. Secondly, the longer you wait, the bigger the Rasengan gets and the damage increases too, making this jutsu incredibly versatile. You can either use it quickly or wait until it charges, depending on the situation. Finally, Boroshiki's ultimate is Karma Awakening. This is the best ultimate for range types, arguably the best ultimate in the game. It makes you activate your Karma Seal, giving you a massive boost for both attack and speed for the next 15 seconds. Additionally, after second input, you create a massive Rasengan that covers a huge area, dealing 90% damage to any enemy caught in it. Both parts of this ultimate could honestly work on their own, and it still would be a decent ultimate, but combined it's incredibly overpowered. This version of Boruto just doesn't have a single jutsu that isn't outstanding, and that's why he's number 1. So that's all of the characters. Obviously, I know a lot of people aren't gonna agree with me, and that's completely fair. Let me know in the comments what you think. Anyway, if you enjoyed watching, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you all soon. Bye!